know is that in the mornings and at night it gets really cold generally, and then in the day it gets really hot. And you
Mhm.
got that, back and forth flow. Is that There we go. You got that back and forth extremes actually in temperature that are really hard to get used to unless you're unless you're used to it. The big go-to is dress in layers.
Oh yeah, well that's true for a lot of places, but
Yeah,
certainly here. Yep.
definitely true here. You got to be uh, prepared to. When I used to work in Denver, I used to work up in Denver and drive back and forth every day
Wow.
to Pueblo, and uh, I would leave Denver. It would be like freezing, and I'd be all wrapped up and bundled up driving down I-25 there. And by the time I started getting into Colorado Springs, I started, taking things off because then by the time I got to Pueblo, it was generally hot as hell. So,
That's funny.
oh man, I can't even believe I did that. But you do what you got to do when there's no jobs in your area for your particular expertise. So,
Well, then Zoom and the internet have changed all that, I suppose, and to some degree.
to some degree, yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. I loved that job. I think about, all the fun I had, all the people that I connected to, and that was the kind of the thing that undid me, I think, in the whole working world was that I got more interested in the people than in whatever the corporation wanted to have happening. So
Hmm.
uh, I know that people everywhere I worked remember me because I made changes that were pretty radical in a lot of places. But I just kept doing all that until they fired me.
You're having everyone chant, "I'm not a body, I'm free," because I'm still as God created me. No, no, not quite that radical, huh?
No, I wasn't going that far, but I was. I got an account. I got ergonomic chairs for everybody. I
Oh.
set up ergonomic workstations. I did all kinds of stuff, and really, honestly, just improved people's experience at work tremendously. Because, when they set up these like factories and stuff, they are not looking at, what is going to be easy for a person to do. They just the engineers just look for how to set it up so that the work flows. And then you get to a point where you see that in order to make this particular thing happen, you have to be, crouching on the ground with your head turned upside down, looking up into some sort of, you know,
Right.
mechanism trying to fix things. I mean, it was a nightmare how they set these things up. And so, part of it is just making sure that it makes sense for people. And,
Hmm.
if everything was designed for people, then, we'd have a much different world because, things would not be dangerous. People would not be, going home not able to pick their kid up because their back aches or, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I guess, that's kind of, what we're doing here. We're trying to help.
Well, in this dream world of space and time, ergonomics can make a difference. I'm thinking about um, oh gosh, a better part of a decade ago now, when my wife was working in Castle Rock in the library, and they were moving some things around, and temporarily she worked at another facility, and it was just going to be for a short time, but all they had for her to sit on was these metal stools that didn't have a back, and just a metal seat, and and so I said, and I said, they didn't even give you a pillow or anything or a cushion or anything like that, and so I said, well, maybe they should at least supply you with some stool softener, so. But that didn't come to pass, I guess, either. So
Oh my God. You are so funny. You just crack me up. Yeah, that's what, people do. We do that in the world. It's temporary. This is just a temporary situation. So
it
I'm just
is. It
going
is.
to, make do with what I have. Instead of really just looking at it and saying, how can I be happy, safe, comfortable in every moment
Yeah.
and
And
every,
of course, never argues against using whatever magic seems to be helpful and
yeah, no.
appropriate. Right? Yeah. So just try to remember it's not the peace of God, but it can be a reflection of an attitude of self-love, even if that self temporarily is assigned to a specific self. We'll get over it.
Exactly, exactly.
As long
Uh,
as we don't exclude anyone else from that self, then we're making good progress, right?
well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing of inclusion is the key to bringing everything into alignment.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Bruce and I are reading Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles, and
By Kenneth Wapnick, PhD.
by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD.
I
And
always flip over to the cover,
yeah,
but
really.
you've got
Oh,
the Kindle version. So.
I have the Kindle, and is it published by the Foundation for Inner Peace or for?
No, actually, this was published. Of course, the Foundation for Inner Peace published lots of things, but this one was. Let's see, let me go to the publication page here and let's see what it says. Uh, I don't see. Oh, it actually just says Foundation for A Course in Miracles.
Oh,
Um, yeah. So this was an FACIM publication, which
okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't say any, like there's any other publisher like a
Like
Simon and Schuster or one of those.
Penguin or none of that.
Yeah, none of that. At least not in
Okay.
this second
Yeah.
printing of December 91 that I'm looking at.
Well, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I
anyway.
I'm looking for my physical copy of the book. I had it right here
Oh,
yesterday.
oh, okay.
But anyway, I don't. I have the Kindle, so it's fine.
Okay.
So I backed us up because what I noticed was where we were at was kind of in the midst of something that was really uh, juicy.
Okay. You want to start
So
a little bit later than dictation then?
yeah, so
Okay, so we're backing up a page, or
yeah,
half a page anyway.
half a page. Yeah. So do you want to read? I'm
Why don't you go ahead?
okay. All right. All right. Okay. So a little bit later in the dictation, Jesus reinforces his previous words of encouragement to Helen and Bill, reminding them of their important roles, not to mention his own. The student of A Course in Miracles can see here the original personal nature of this important passage that is found in the printed text near the end of chapter 4. Text chapter 4, section 6, um, paragraph 6 and 7. As was previously explained, Jesus' statement of trust in quote unquote choosing Helen and Bill should be understood as his speaking to them in a language they could accept and understand. I return to this point in chapter 17. So that's kind of the introduction to this paragraphs that we're going to read. So Jesus says to them, my trust in you is greater than yours in me at the moment, but it will not always be that way. Your mission is very simple. You have been chosen to live so as to demonstrate that you are not an ego. I repeat that I do not choose God's channels wrongly. The Holy One shares my trust and always approves my atonement decisions because my will is never out of accord with his. I'm just checking my settings on Pal Talk real quick here. Okay, so this is a kind of a famous paragraph uh, um, to me because I love that he says, you have been chosen to live so as to demonstrate that you are not an ego. I think that's one of the most important lines in the course, actually. because that is the goal. Uh, Dove is doing the uh, homily at Awakening Together tomorrow for their weekly gathering, and he's going to be talking about setting the goal, and how important it is because once the goal is once you're clear on the goal, then all things come together, and you'll see that all things have been coming together anyway, but all things come together to assist you in reaching that goal, and everything you see is actually a reminder or a help to reach that goal. So, if I decide, today, my goal is that I'm going to not judge, like one of our recent lessons, judge nothing today. That's my goal. So then, things come up to judge. And if I look at those things that come up and say, oh, there is that, there it is again, there it is again, then I recognize that all these things are coming to me to help me to reach my goal, reinforce my goal, and to do what it is that I'm intending to do. So, that picking the goal, deciding on what your goal is really, really, really important in order, because otherwise everything seems random and nothing seems to make any sense. But once you pick the goal and you begin looking for the reinforcing ideas and thoughts and actions and things that happen that bring you more toward that goal, you do see that there's a purpose. Oh goodness, what the heck? Let's see, decline this and block this guy. What the holy heck? Why in the holy heck? All right. Goodbye, Mr. Albert. Somebody's trying to call me on Pal Talk. Oh my gosh. That's happened a couple times lately. I don't know what's going on with that. Well, there we go. There is an example of something that has come to disturb my peace. And, I recognize right away some guy's trying to call me, and oop, that is stopping me from being able to, teach this lesson or talk about this book. And so, I'm going to just block him. But, I have a goal also that I'm going to just do everything out of love. So, is blocking this guy who's trying to call me, um, uh, keeping with my goal? And yes, it is in keeping with my goal because I'm I'm not here to talk to some guy named Albert. That's just I'm here to talk to you, and he should have noticed that if he was in the pal talk room. So okay. So anyway,
Well,
so
if we're talking relativity, it could have been Albert Einstein from beyond the grave trying to get a hold of you. So
that's right.
he
Well,
might have had some new insights metaphysically from his more recent experience,
there you go. And,
no
and, and
no
I was
longer
going to
afraid of spooky action at distance and that kind of
the
stuff.
spooky action at distance that cracks me up so much. Yeah, woo. But he's already came to me in my dreams before Albert Einstein, so
Yeah, well, cool.
so he knows where to find me if you really want. So so okay, so I repeat that I do not choose God's channels wrongly. The Holy One shares my trust and always approves my atonement decisions because my will is never out of accord with his. And that's Jesus, of course, talking to Helen and Bill. So, he's told us, You've been chosen to live so as to demonstrate that you are not an ego." And, I think that's kind of the point of what we're doing here, is to not just to realize that I'm not in the ego, but to live as if I'm not. To live as if I'm not. That's a direct, thing about, how I behave, how I live, what I put into my consciousness and allow and what I don't. It's all my decision. So Jesus continues, I have told you several times that I am in charge of the whole atonement. This is only because I completed my part in it as a man and can now complete it through other men. My chosen receiving and sending channels, in brackets, Helen and Bill, cannot fail because I will lend them my strength as long as theirs is wanting. I will go with you to the Holy One, and through my perception, he can bridge the little gap. Your gratitude to each other is the only gift I want. I will bring it to God for you, knowing that to know your brother is to know God. And here again is one of the more important concepts, I guess, in the course is that, my brother is myself, and that that little gap that's between myself and my brother is the only thing that is keeping us apart. So he kind of gives us a hint of how to bridge that little gap. Gratitude to each other. That's if you could really, you speaking of someone other than me, if you, if I could, um, if I could be grateful to my brothers, every single one of them, for the role that they play in my redemption, in my salvation, if I could be truly grateful to them for that, the guy that's a bad guy that is doing terrible things that are, making me really mad, if I could just be grateful to him for showing me what my triggers are, showing me what my judgments are, showing me how I am living as an ego. I should be, sending that guy gifts in the mail, buying his golden tennis shoes. I should be doing a bunch of things to show that I'm not an ego, because that my ego is so completely against all of that. So he's really given us a direction of how to do this, um, and that he will help us. So even if I don't want to say thank you, even if I don't, oh my God, I would rather, slit my wrists than to, say this guy is a good guy. Even if I don't want to do that, he'll help me. He'll help me do it because he knows that that's my salvation. This joining with my brother is the most important thing. So, okay, so you have anything to say about that before I
Well,
go on?
yeah, I think it's just, and I think the course, as Ken Wapnick points out so many times, is it's not a course in the positive, it's a course in undoing the negative and using Holy Spirit's counsel as much as we can and as often as we can, which isn't really anything outside of ourself. It really is that part, that awareness that's already in our mind that is the link back to our real identity that just tells us that, um, our the way we can find the peace that we thought we'd forsaken is to uh, see the shared interest and forgive ourselves for projecting our unconscious unfounded guilt onto everyone and everything, and just noticing how we just need to keep looking at all the ways that we're sabotaging the peace by making everyone else, a scapegoat one way or another for our misery, including our own bodies, including the weather, including, the state of the economy, is not to mention the countless relationships we have with literally everyone on the planet in human form and a whole bunch of non-human varieties as well. Uh, Thinking about the couple of javelina that I walked past this morning on my
Oh
morning
my
walk.
gosh, yeah, those can be some pretty crazy critters.
Yeah, and saw half a dozen of them a few mornings ago too. And but it's like, well, we're all in this same dream together, so we just need to recognize that we all have the same interest of wanting the peace, but noticing how much we fight against that is really at the heart of the course's curriculum, and seeing how much, as Ken says, it's almost sounds contrary, how much we hate the course is really just bringing that ego mind out of its darkness into the light and just say, wow, I must have been really resistant to the love that is beyond that, that resistance, that obstacle to peace in my mind that I've cherished for how many who knows how many lifetimes, and just be patient and gentle with ourselves as we notice those things, and slowly but surely that self-sabotage and using anything and everything to destroy tendency of the ego will gradually um, will be less and less interested in it. The ego's insanity doesn't increase, but our investment in its insanity decreases over time. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And so and that then becomes our lives become uh softer. We become it actually literally does
hmm
change the world. And that we talk about, well, we're not here to change the world. It does change the world, because now, instead of seeing a world uh that is fearful and full of danger, we see a world that is helpful and full of love.
and
And
that world is always in our mind,
yeah.
as to paraphrase and slightly modify Willie Nelson's lyric, you were always in my mind.
Exactly. And yeah, and because the world we see is in our mind, that we're not seeing a world where all these things are actually happening. This is just an overlay of an illusion that is hiding what's really there. And what's really there, beyond the veil, is the love of God.
hmm
So it's not even like, we're not in denial of the world we see. We're just recognizing that the world we see is a reflection of our thinking, and we can change our mind. And when I change my mind about what it is that I see, it becomes a gentle world. And I begin to see that, all things are happening perfectly. The world is neutral, the body is neutral. There's nothing really happening here. And the only thing that seems to be happening are the stories. It's like the movie screen. It's just sitting there, or the sky, the clouds just pass. You hear all these analogies all the time, but this is what, honestly, if we hadn't have had movies, we probably wouldn't even know what that meant. But when you go in the theater and you look at the screen, it's just sitting there. There's nothing on it
hmm
until the projection starts. And when the projection starts, then you see all the stories. And you become so involved in it, you think you're part of the story. But the fact is, we are always in the audience watching.
Yeah.
We have never gone into the movie screen.
Well, even before, I think of, the Shakespearean era where the theater really burgeoned. At least
Yes.
that's my understanding of it. And although there's the Greek comedies and tragedies, and theater's probably all been in some form or another for many millennia. But even without that metaphor, our dreams are such an incredible metaphor. I think that's why, to me, the most powerful, if not or one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful metaphors in the dream, in the course, is the metaphor of the dream, because everyone has dreams of one sort or another. Even if you don't remember them, you kind of knew you've been dreaming a lot of the time. And um, the idea of taking something that happened in a dream and thinking we need to, when you wake up in the morning, oh, I better finish, reconciling that dream. No, usually most sane people will say, okay, that was a dream, so now I need to deal with my quote real unquote life. And the
Yeah.
course says all our time is spent in dreaming. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, on the level of form, just as in a dream, while you're in your dream, you do the things you think are needed in your dream. Um, the course doesn't suggest that we don't do the magic that's, we think is necessary to make us feel more secure and happy and peaceful in our dreams, but it just reminds us that we're dreaming. And so, we really could be peaceful independent of both our daytime dreams and our nighttime dreams. And I think that's just an incredibly powerful um, mechanism and metaphor for looking at how we can undo the ego's tendency to want to reverse cause and effect and do level confusion and try to make it always about what we've projected outside. But the course is so insistent and says in at least two places, ideas don't leave their source.
Yeah.
And because the world has never left its source in our mind, and the only place it really, for each one of us, does exist is in our mind. And I think the way to demonstrate that to yourself is to just recognize that, some person in Madagascar or some other part of the world that's seems far away, um, probably has, a fairly different set of experiences on a daily basis to what we experience in many respects. And yet, um, does that mean that there's multiple worlds? Well, in a sense, I mean that's the the first law of chaos is that the truth is different from everyone. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of a way to remind ourselves that what we are experiencing as individuals can't be the truth, but it really is just a projection of a dream that we made up that seems to be separate, and that appearance of separation is at the core of the atonement principle that says nothing happened. Nothing did and could possibly separate us from each other and from our Creator. So
Yeah.
the sameness is how we get back to it, right?
Exactly. It's the sameness is how we get back to it. And that is, exactly what I think, Jesus is telling them right here in these paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Mm-hmm.
that, you once you realize that you do not have different interests, you do not have different needs, you do not have different everything is this the sameness is what's real. And as you said, that's one of uh the tests for is it real? Can it be shared? Is it shared universally? Does everyone have it?
Mm-hmm.
Can everyone have it? If not, if it's something special for me, it's not real. Same thing, will it last forever? Is it eternal? Is it unending? If it's not, if it comes and goes time in time, it's not real. you know these are simple simple tips. So what is real is the love that we share, and that's the only thing that can be, if in the court of uh spiritual justice, the judge is always going to say, you know not guilty. The nothing happened.
Yep.
So,
Get
that
out of my courtroom, says
yeah,
Jesus. Yeah.
get out of my courtroom.
Go home. You're all
What
innocent.
what you built a courtroom for?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the heck is
And
going on?
his courtroom is always in the mind and always in the decision-making part of the mind, not the anywhere in the dream, in either the ego's dream or its projection, you know. So
Yeah, exactly. And Dove posts in the chat, let me remember I'm always speaking to myself.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, so
yeah.
true. So true.
So true, so true.
Very true.
So you want me to continue reading?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Shortly afterwards, Jesus returned to specifically addressing Helen and Bill, and once again compared and contrasted their egos' defensive systems. Near the end of the passage, Jesus returns to his attempts at correcting Bill's marked tendency to withdraw from others, distanciation, a similar theme to the one found in his discussion of Bill's classic Columbia. And so he's directly addressing the idea of separation that we do ourselves. We do stand away from our brother. So Jesus says, because you are all the kingdom of God, and that's with capital KINGDOM of capital GOD, kingdom of God, I can lead you back to your own creations, which you do not yet know. God has kept them very safe in his knowing while your attention has wandered. Bill gave you in brackets Helen, a very important idea when he told you that what has been dissociated is still there.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so and
As
nothing,
as as ostriches, we may put our head in the sand, but what's above the sand is still there, right?
right, exactly. And I'm still as God created me.
Hmm.
I'm still as God created me. So that's, I mean, simple, 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 simple. And yet, oh my gosh, the ego goes crazy thinking about that. So,
Yeah.
so Ken continues. In other words, the love of God, which has been split off, has not disappeared from the mind. It merely has been hidden by the ego's fear of it. Earlier, Jesus has told Helen these encouraging words. Um, and this is from text chapter 3, section 6. You have not usurped the power of God, but you have lost it. Fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it has gone. It merely means that you do not remember where it is. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it or even to place it.
I just think it's humorous because the way we oftentimes use the phrase "you've lost it" kind of now sort of implies a, a little bit of a clinical psychological quality to it, but of course, as Ken Wapnick points out, he says we may not be clinically insane, but we're all, paranoid schizophrenic if we identify with our egos, and that's what we're here to undo. That's what we need to look at and see how crazy we are believing that a world of space and time could in any way compromise or threaten our real identity, which is outside of space and time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is humorous because, he's reminding us just because you don't know where it is doesn't mean it's not here.
Right, right. That also kind of reminds me of that wonderful statement that's, Son of God, you have not sinned, but you've been much mistaken. I find that really helpful, but both humorous and helpful. It's like, okay, I'm, I'm just as clueless as everyone else, but the fact that we're all clueless here is really a very hopeful thing, meaning, we're all just uh, silly zombies. We're not evil, sinful, or wicked. We're just silly, believing in the roles that we've taken on and gotten into character, portraying these silly, seemingly separate selves with such authenticity and such finesse that yeah, I actually, for the most part, think I am Bruce Rawls, and you probably, for the most part, think you're Lynn Johnson most of every day. I would
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
and
And
we don't even question that that's a role that we've taken on.
absolutely, yeah. And when I think about it, I don't think about myself as Lynn Johnson, but because I don't know who that is, I mean that's that seems like a foreign object to me. But because I don't identify with it, I realize I don't identify with my name or my body. If I look
Mhm.
at myself in the mirror, I do not see me. It doesn't look like me at all. I'm
Yeah,
always surprised.
exactly, exactly.
But as you were pointing out, we are all bozos on this bus.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. That was a
Uh,
nose squeeze and a
yeah,
clown nose
it was,
squeeze.
it
Yeah.
was the red nose. Yep. I love it. We are all
Yeah,
bozos on this bus.
exactly.
Oh my gosh. So that reminds me of good times, old times. Jesus continues by thanking Bill for reminding Helen of that helpful idea. And so Jesus says, I am grateful to him for that. And I hope he will not decide that it is true only for you. Even though dissociation is much more apparent in you and repression is much more evident in him, each of you utilizes both. I love that Jesus says, I'm grateful to Bill. I love that he's grateful to us. Just think about that for just a second.
That is hugely important because if we can recognize that the gratitude from our Creator and through the part of our mind that's never left the Creator, which Jesus is a perfect representative of, has continued unabated and has never been diminished or compromised or altered in any way. That gratitude and that perfect love, perfect peaceful acceptance, um, is in our mind just waiting for our acceptance. So that really is our call to gratitude and response. And the only way that we can feel gratitude is by ditching the ego's um, insanity and really more and more consistently practicing the forgiveness that that reestablishes the real foundation in our mind for the gratitude. Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And recognizing the value of what we've been given.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're going to be grateful when you realize, geez, Louise, what the hell, what has this done for me? I mean, if I had known when I first started taking or reading this Course in Miracles, when I first read The Disappearance of the Universe and realized, oh my gosh, all these things I suspected all along were true. God didn't make this. This is not, all the different things that just bing, 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 bing from
Hmm.
that book and from starting and reading the course. Um, you know, when that all started, uh, I didn't, really honestly had no thought that at now, how many years later, I would be so happy and that the conflicts that had seemed to be so important in my life were just gone and there is nothing but joy that's left. If I had thought that it would be even possible for me to be this happy, I mean, at that time I was suicidal. I was ready to kill myself.
And I think because we've given ourselves, I mean, the course certainly is a mechanism by which, it's a catalyst, but it's not the cause. It's really just a reflection of our mind's decision to want peace more than war, want the truth more than the lies of the ego. Um, but that is you know, that recognition that we're more peaceful than when we picked up the course however many years or decades ago, uh, is a really good example of how we really do want the peace that's consistent and unchanging. Um, I've just been listening to the changeless dwelling place, one of Ken's wonderful audios, and talking about how, if we just keep fixing our mind on what doesn't change, then all the things that do change will become our classroom for forgiveness, and we will be able to navigate them more quickly and more easily, and be able to dismiss the ego's, call to attack and revenge, and to be feel martyred and victimized and upset by every little thing. And because we've recognized, well, I'm the electrician who wired those buttons that other people seem to be pushing.
Yes, exactly.
The secret of salvation is I'm doing this to myself. It's like, well, that changes everything. Now I can, it may not be an overnight process and probably might be, uh, you know, span multiple decades or even lifetimes. But who cares? If once we recognize that we have that ability, the end result is a happy inevitability that we will be consistently peaceful. And
Yeah.
even if we're just a little bit more peaceful at the outset, and like you say, over time you realize, well, I am significantly more peaceful than I was 40 years ago when I picked up the course, or whatever the time frame happens to be, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I even think about, even uh, just over the last 4 or 5 years, how much of the fear that had just driven me in my life has just faded away to,
Uh-huh.
I can look at these things and I can't even imagine being afraid of it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what a gift that is. My
Hmm.
goodness, that is, you know, what a gift. And of course I'm grateful for that. And just to know God's grateful to me for choosing to do it. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So let's see, where are we at? What time do we have? Okay, good. We got plenty of time.
Should I pick up on
Wisdom?
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Wisdom always dictates that a therapist work through weaker defenses first. That is why I suggested to Bill that he persuade you to deal with his repression first. We have only just about reached the point where dissociation means much to you because it is so important to your misbeliefs. Bill might do well, and you could help him here to concentrate more on his dissociative tendencies and not to try to deal with repression yet. I hinted at this when I remarked on his habit of disengaging himself, and when I spoke to him about distantiation and detachment. These are all forms of dissociation, and these weaker forms were always more evident in him than in you. That is because dissociation was so extreme in your case that you did not have to hide it because you were not aware that it was there. Bill, on the other hand, does dissociate more than he thinks, and that is why he cannot listen. He does not need to go through the same course in repression that you did, because he will give up his major misdefense after he has rid himself of the lesser ones. That's interesting. It seems like misdefense is almost a redundant word in the sense that defenses are all misdefenses. Of course, this thought system, it would seem. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Any,
don't know if that's even a real word, but
yeah. Well, this is a new word to me. I know I read this book before a decade or so ago, but I don't remember that word. Yeah.
it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Should I go on?
Yeah, continue on.
Okay. Do not disturb yourself about repression, Bill, but do train yourself to be alert to any tendency to withdraw from your brothers. Withdrawal is frightening, and you do not recognize all the forms it takes in you. Helen is right that she will experience things that will cut across all her perceptions because of their stunning knowledge. You were right that this will occur when she learns to recognize what she already knows and has dissociated. You, Bill, will learn somewhat differently because you are afraid of all complete involvements and believe that they lessen you. You have learned to be so much more clear-sighted about this that you should be ready to oppose it in yourself relatively easily. As you come closer to a brother, you do approach me, and as you withdraw from him, I become distant to you. Now that line I think is in the course
It is in the
somewhere.
course or something
Yeah,
of that nature.
something pretty close to that wording. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your giant step forward was to insist, in italics, on a collaborative venture. That's there must be a better way and I'll help you find it response, right? This does not go against the true spirit of meditation at all. It is inherent in it. Meditation is a collaborative venture with God. It cannot be undertaken successfully by those who disengage themselves from the sonship because, and then Ken puts in brackets, by doing so, they are disengaging themselves from me, with a capital M, me. So yeah, a lot in there. But it seems like the essence of it is if we dissociate or disengage from Holy Spirit, it can manifest in a lot of ways, but it's not the disengagement from the other people or the situations or the whatever that well, actually this probably I think works for both dissociation and repression, because they're kind of really different forms of the same denial process that the ego works with, right? The same sin, guilt, fear thought system is if I can just look at the way that I want to make duality real, all the different ways, and look at it with Holy Spirit without condemnation, then I'm going to heal that uh, process in my mind sooner or later.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. This paragraph is really interesting because he's talking about that the first that it's a collaborative venture, which we've known.
Hmm.
It doesn't go against the true spirit of meditation at all. And he
Hmm.
doesn't really talk about meditation in the course, I don't think.
Not much, not
Yeah.
much. No, I'm going to look it up real quick. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so it's
very few
inherent in it.
references.
But he says meditation is a collaborative venture with God.
Hmm.
And so to me, it is like prayer is something that we do constantly with God. This seems like, it has a different flavor to it. Collaborative venture with God. I'm not even sure that, most meditation that people do has really anything to do with God at all. I'm, not in the sense of the word that people would be using talking about God.
Hmm.
But people meditate, for peace or connection or whatever, but uh, not. Uh, I mean, it's just really interesting to me. So Bruce says there's two reference to meditation in a course, and so, yeah, two references to meditation. And people a lot of times say, well, Jesus doesn't say to meditate. But, apparently it's a concept that's not unfamiliar to him. And it actually is a collaborative venture with God.
Hmm.
So, and it cannot be undertaken successfully by those who disengage themselves from the sonship, because by doing so, they are disengaging themselves from me.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And I think that ties into beautifully to what Ken Wapnick, reiterates so many ways and in so many different forms, and that is there's really only one relationship, and that's our relationship with the Holy Spirit. And you might say there's two because the other relationship is our relationship with the ego, but that's a relationship with a non-existent identity that we made up. So that's the relationship we need to not fight against, not do battle with, but just to recognize that it's made up. And I think that's why that italicized sentence in the beginning of chapter 30, right before the rules for decision, is "do not fight yourself" is so important. It's like if I'm trying to battle the ego, I'm using the ego's methodology to not really let the ego just disappear of its own non-existence, but I'm really trying to sneakily keep the ego going by focusing attention on it as if it existed. I think that's why, the whole basis for forgiveness is, you know, forgiveness looks and waits and judges not. It's like I just have to look at what I made up and wait for the aha moment that's inevitable that says, wow, this couldn't have happened in truth. And therefore, if it's an ephemeral, fleeting, temporal thing that just can only seem to happen in time, it can't be the reality of my being, real being, and your real being, which is the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautifully, beautifully stated. I can't add to it. Uh, so let's see. Uh, so you want to continue reading?
Well, I read it a bit. You want to read
Okay.
around this time?
Around this time, Helen took down a long message for her and Bill that was never typed. Once again, we find an illustration of the person. Oh, and by the way, I think that last bit was when she was just directly dictating without notes.
Oh,
She
okay.
was saying it, and Bill was typing it up. As
Okay.
she was saying, "You, Helen, do this, and you, Bill," which I think is just again, I have to remind myself, and it always cracks me up because Jesus is saying through Helen, "You, Bill." Will learn
Uh-huh.
this. You, Helen, will do
Right.
this.
Right. Right.
Or I just think it's just very, very funny. Okay, so once again, we find an illustration of the personal nature of Helen's relationship with Jesus, as well as the specific ways he was attempting to help her and Bill. The major focus of this message was Jesus's urging Helen and Bill to consult with him more in their daily decisions. To make his point, he provides them with specific examples of how they failed to ask his help, and therefore how the unhappy consequences were inevitable. The full message now follows. Ooh, I love this. Ooh. Okay. The reason for the fear reaction is quite apparent. This is Jesus speaking directly
Hmm.
to Helen.
Hmm.
The reason for the fear reaction is quite apparent. You have not yet been able to suspend judgment and have merely succeeded in weakening your control over it. Since you have an unfortunate tendency to be self-punishing, you believe that control of judgment is a self-preserving function and therefore require it as a necessary defense of yourself. Weakening this defense delivery is thus perceived as dangerous vulnerability, which frightens you. And so this reminds me of something that Dove was saying the other day from Est, is that the way that Werner Erhard described the ego is that it is believes its job is to protect you,
Hmm.
and it's going to protect you and preserve you in at whatever means it has to. And as Jesus tells us, even to the point of killing us, that's how the how the ego is so wanting to preserve itself, and because it identifies with you, it thinks it's protecting you. Uh,
Pretty insane that suicide is self-preservation, but that's really the whole message of the ego when you really
yeah,
distill it down. It's just how could it be anything but insane that to and the irony, of course, is that if the ego is a thought system we made up that has no reality and truth and eternity, um, the infinite unchanging realm of our true being, then anything that it tells us, it has to be based on the lie that is designed to preserve itself, and yet underneath that is a recognition that it's made up. So, yeah, when you talk about phrases like the death of the ego, well, it's like well the undoing of a ghost, or the relinquishment of a fantasy.
yeah,
It's really not any different. And I think that's why Ken says, this is a incredibly difficult course because, we all identify with our bodies and our personas and all the ephemeral temporal things that go to make up what we think we are. I'm looking on my desk. I see a wallet that's got a driver's license and some credit cards, and I've got a little fitness club membership for the community we live in, and my phone and glasses and you know quote unquote personal items that are sitting on my desk that I identify with as my stuff, quote George Carlin. And it's just like, well, on the level of form, that's very appropriate. But the course says, what if there is no level of form?
right.
This is the central thought the course attempts to teach.
Yeah,
There is no world. But in our mind, we made up a world, and so that's why we need to heal the world that's in our mind, and not think, because if we think ill or think unwell of anyone that's in our mind, then we're basically saying the separation happened, and that I need to continue to punish myself for an impossible crime.
yeah,
So
and it's
anyway,
your fault.
yeah, I'm going to put a little bookmark here and
Okay,
um, sign off for the week, and I will I look forward to picking up the conversation a week from today.
thank you
And
so much, Bruce. I love you with all my heart. Thank you,
likewise,
Doris.
Lynn, and thanks to Dove and Glorian as well for joining us, as well as anyone who's listening now and or later.
Yep,
Love to all. Have a great week.
you too, honey. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye.